Hi everyone, I'm Hemaa, and today I'm going to be presenting my thesis titled A New Synergy, Studying Civil Society's Effectiveness in Changing Policy. So I think we all understand that in Singapore, civil society is a largely restricted space, highly state-managed, and especially when civil society organizations want to do something that's a little bit more political, they run into trouble here. But there are still some groups that have managed to achieve some level of success here. And my question was, how are they able to do this? So to that end, I decided to ask this this RQ, why has AWARE been more effective in realizing policy change in some cases of its advocacy, but not others? So I chose to focus on AWARE mainly because of my familiarity with the group, because I worked closely with the group in the past, and two, because AWARE is a very well-known civil society organization with a long history of advocating for policy change in especially gender issues. So to answer this question, I basically compare successes and failures. So successes meaning where policy change has been achieved, and failures where policy change has not been achieved. There were many failures, but there was one clear success case, and that I identified as AWARE's advocacy for changing single parents' housing. So I think we all know that in Singapore, single parents find it very difficult to get housing. A lot of them would live with their family in crowded areas, or some are even homeless. So the change in policy that I identified was the removal of the debarment rule, which was originally there that prevented divorcees from getting housing in the past. So that happened in 2018. So there is, in this particular case, when I looked at it, one clear salient difference was there, and that was the clear involvement of a particular state actor, or almost a champion even, unlike in other cases of AWARE's advocacy. And that person actually happens to be MP Louis Ng, who isn't here yet, but he will be here later. So I explained this particular involvement through the lens of this concept called synergy. So what is synergy? So synergy ultimately refers, in very basic terms, it just means mutually supportive or mutually reinforcing relations between state and civil society. So state and civil society, which ultimately can lead to developmental outcomes. What do I mean by development then? Development can be thought of as something, in the more traditional senses of the term, something like irrigation or building a dam for a particular community, or it could be even something like changing policy to improve the quality of life of a particular community that's, going through something. So there are two ways to think about synergy. The first way is complementarity. Complementarity in the simplest form just means a division of labor between state and civil society. So state would basically put in the resources that it's best equipped to do so, and civil society will do the same, and this will ultimately pave the way to some developmental outcome. On the other hand, embeddedness is a more novel form of thinking about synergy. Basically, it refers to close links, close relations, close ties between state and civil society, which can then lead to some sort of developmental outcome. So the other thing to understand is that many times, both of these types of synergies are present, and they work together in tandem to bring about the particular developmental outcome. So in the single parents housing case, the synergy that we see isn't actually between civil society and state. It is actually between a particular particular state actor and civil society. So the particular state actor happens to be MP Louis Ng, which is why my thesis is titled A New Synergy. So I basically invent a new form of synergy in this paper in order to explain what is going on in this case. So how did this new synergy come about? So the story begins when MP Ng was a civil society actor himself. he was the founder of ACRES, the Animal Concerns Research and Education Society, and this means that he was basically present in civil society spaces and circles and events. He got to know of AWARE and interact with them and even collaborate with them to some degree. So there's some embeddedness already realized in the past, before he becomes a parliamentarian. After that, MP Ng becomes an MP, and then AWARE also starts intensively advocating for policy change in this particular area. And then MP Ng starts to go to his MPS sessions, Meet the People sessions, and then finds out that, okay, like there are lots of single parents in my constituency that need housing and they're not able to get it. So he thinks to himself, okay, I've got to do something about this. Who should I go to? So the first instinct was to go to AWARE because, one, he knows AWARE. He knows of AWARE in the past. He's had interactions with them. So that's embeddedness paving the way to collaboration. And two, he knows that AWARE has been advocating on this issue already. So it makes a lot of sense for him to go to AWARE to do this. So after the initial contact is made, they basically start talking about how to collaborate. And that's where the division of labor starts coming into play. And so while AWARE basically provided the research and the data about what was actually going on the ground, they also provided access to their single parents network so that MP Ng could understand the lived experiences of these women and what they actually go through when it comes to getting housing in Singapore. On the other hand, MP Ng would provide knowledge on how to use the different parliamentary tools. So like petitions, speeches, everything else, questions as well, and also provided influence and profile, especially when he's interviewed by the media, etc. So all of this lead to several parliamentary like cuts, questions, a petition even, and ultimately policy change comes about. So my question is, although synergy can be used to describe this particular case, how useful is the lens of synergy in explaining other cases of policy change driven by civil society? Maybe it's purely a necessary condition and not something that is sufficient in all cases. The other thing I was thinking about also is MP Ng's unique positionality in all of this. He has history with civil society in the past, so that makes him want to talk about civil society issues in Parliament. He wants to be a bridge almost between civil society and state. What if there are cases where a civil society group actually wants to engage with an incumbent state actor who doesn't have any civil society history? Is that possible? So these are some questions to think about. And it will be very important to ask and answer these questions because we would understand state and state civil society relations in Singapore a lot better because we don't really understand it very well now, and also improve the currently strained relations, tense relations between the two sides, which can ultimately pave the way for more mutually beneficial outcomes, which could ultimately benefit society as a whole. So with that, thank you very much for listening. Yeah.